Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, deep within the essence of human beings lie precious seeds that shape character and distinguish us from other living creatures. These are the capacity for love, sincerity, and the voice of conscience. Kindness, sincerity, and conscience are like three sacred torches, illuminating our path, keeping our souls warm, and guiding our actions according to what is right, according to human compassion. But what happens when those torches one by one flicker out? What happens when people lose these core qualities? Today, I want to delve with you into an alarming reality, a harsh but true rule. The loss of kindness, sincerity, and the voice of conscience is the shortest path leading to indifference and cruelty in human souls and actions. 1. When kindness fades, the death of empathy. Kindness, compassion, caring for others, these are the abilities to put ourselves in another's shoes, to feel their pain or joy as our own, and from that, the desire to share and help arises. It is the invisible thread connecting people, creating warmth and solidarity in society. Loss of kindness leads to indifference. When kindness cools, the capacity for empathy gradually becomes paralyzed. The suffering of others no longer touches our hearts. Unfortunate lives, cries for help become alien, like news headlines rather than the tragedy of a flesh and blood person. We see someone in need and indifferently pass by, hear a sad story without our hearts being stirred. Indifference arises from the very death of the ability to resonate with the suffering of our fellow beings. People become more selfish, only concerned with their own interests and feelings. Loss of kindness paves the way for cruelty. Empathy is the natural barrier preventing us from harming others. When we no longer feel the pain of the other person, that barrier collapses. Causing suffering to others no longer bothers us, no longer makes us feel guilty. People can easily say hurtful words, take harmful actions, even resort to violence, because they no longer see the emotional consequences their actions cause to the victim. Others are objectified, seen as tools or obstacles, instead of as human beings with feelings who deserve respect. Cruelty arises from the very emptiness of compassion. 2. When sincerity disappears, the reign of deceit and exploitation. Sincerity is truthfulness from thought, word, to action. It is the consistency between inner values and outer expression. It is integrity, without falsehood, without hidden self-interest. Sincerity is the foundation of trust and genuine connection between people. Loss of sincerity leads to indifference. When sincerity is no more, people start living behind masks. Words become hollow. Actions are merely superficial or for personal gain. Relationships become shallow, full of calculation. The spread of deceit erodes trust in people, in life. When we no longer believe in truthfulness, no longer feel genuine connection, people easily become suspicious, lonely, and cold. They become indifferent to everything around them because they themselves no longer feel anything is real, anything is worth caring about deeply. Loss of sincerity fosters cruelty. The absence of sincerity is fertile ground for deception, betrayal, and exploitation. People can easily lie to achieve their goals, make empty promises for profit, betray the trust of others without a hint of remorse. These behaviors, in essence, are cruel because they cause deep mental and material harm to the victim. The insincere person sees others as pawns to manipulate, ready to trample on their interests and feelings to satisfy their own greed or ambition. Cruelty here takes a subtle but equally toxic form. 3. When conscience is silent, the line between good and evil is blurred. Conscience is the inner moral compass within each person, the inner voice that tells us what is right, what is wrong, what we should do, and what we should not do. It is linked to a sense of responsibility, remorse when doing wrong, and the urge to do good. Conscience is the last guardian of human dignity. Loss of conscience leads to indifference. If the voice of conscience is ignored or completely silent, people will lose the ability to distinguish right from wrong. They will no longer feel troubled when doing wrong, no longer feel the urge to help the vulnerable, no longer feel responsible to the community. They can witness injustice and wrongdoing and remain indifferent, because their inner moral compass has stopped working. This moral indifference is a dangerous state, because it makes people passive in the face of evil and lose the motivation to do good. Loss of conscience unleashes cruelty. When there is no longer the control of conscience, all barriers preventing cruel behavior are removed. People can freely do evil without being tormented by guilt or remorse. They can find countless reasons to justify their cruel actions. Everyone does it. They deserve it, for a higher purpose. Cruelty at this point is no longer impulsive, but can become intentional, systematic, because the perpetrator has completely disabled their own mechanism of moral judgment and adjustment. This is the ground for the most horrific crimes. 4. The downward spiral and the normalization of evil. The frightening thing is that kindness, sincerity, and conscience are intimately connected. The decline of one element often leads to the weakening of the others, forming a downward moral spiral. For example, when conscience is silent, it is easy to act insincerely. Prolonged deceit cools kindness. Thus, people increasingly slide into the mire of indifference and cruelty. When indifference and cruelty become common in society through daily news, through the way people treat each other, through toxic online culture, there is a risk of it being normalized. People gradually get used to evil, become hardened, and lose the necessary sensitivity. The moral boundaries of the entire community are lowered, allowing indifferent and cruel behaviors to spread more easily. We see this in the indifference to cries for help on social media, the apathy when seeing someone in need on the street, fraud targeting the elderly and weak, domestic and school violence, the way people are willing to trample on each other for personal gain. These are not isolated incidents, but alarming manifestations of the erosion of core human values. 5. Relighting the flame of humanity, the responsibility of each of us. Facing this sad reality, we cannot just stand by or blame circumstances. Preserving and nurturing kindness, sincerity, and conscience is an urgent responsibility of every individual and the entire community. Cultivate kindness. Start with the smallest things. Practice listening to understand. Practice putting yourself in others' shoes. Be willing to help those around you within your means. Participate in charitable activities. Teach children about compassion from a young age. Train sincerity. Practice being truthful with yourself and with others. Keep your promises. Act consistently with your words and values. Be brave to face the truth, even when difficult. Build relationships based on trust and sincerity. Listen to the voice of conscience. Do not ignore the feelings of unease and guilt when doing wrong. Take time to reflect on moral standards, on the consequences of your actions. Be brave to stand for what is right. Protect the weak, even when it is not easy. Moral education in families and schools plays an extremely important role. Build a humane community. Let each of us be an example of kindness and integrity. Speak out against indifference and cruelty. Spread stories and acts of kindness. Create a social environment where goodness is encouraged and evil is strongly condemned. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, kindness, sincerity, and conscience are not abstract, distant concepts. They are vital qualities, the moral immune system protecting the human soul from the virus of indifference and cruelty. Losing them is losing the most precious part of the human within ourselves, pushing society into the darkness of moral decay. The road ahead may be challenging, but there is a way out. Every act of kindness, however small, every sincere word, every time we listen to the voice of conscience, is a brick contributing to rebuilding the shaking moral fortress. I earnestly call upon each of us. Let us start with ourselves, starting today. Let us question our hearts. Does the flame of kindness still burn within me? Does sincerity still guide my path? Does the voice of conscience still resonate? Let us together preserve and illuminate those sacred torches in our souls and spread that light to the community. Because a society is only truly good when people know how to love, live sincerely, and act according to what is right. That is the most solid foundation to push back the darkness of indifference and cruelty, building a more humane and compassionate future for all of us. Thank you very much for your kind attention.